Jonah, if it's him, whatever you do, keep your cool.
Don't I always... Anything happens to her, I'll...
You're what? You're not in a position to do anything.
Don't count on that, you six-armed squid.
No.
Welcome, webheads. My name is Hack of the Hackjack Show, and I would like to welcome you to Spider Blood, a retrospective series looking back at the 90s Spider-Man cartoon. For those new to the channel, the Hackjack Show is a video game / comic book entertainment channel where Jack and I live stream and discuss the ongoings of our two favorite hobbies as well as be our goofy selves. I still remember to this day what response he gave to Pixie to join our side. Guess what he said? Guess what was the key sentence that I needed to say for this Pixie to join my side?
Oh, something lewd, I bet.
Not quite, but it's very egotistical, very narcissistic. He picks the option that said, "I want you to know about me." And it freaking worked. That was the right response. You can check out all of our episodes in the Hackjack Show playlist. In this episode, we will review the first appearance of one of Spider-Man's greatest enemies with Episode 4, Dr. Octopus Armed and Dangerous. This takes place after the two-parter Spider Slayer story, in which you can learn more about in the previous Spider Blood videos. For this episode, it's your standard Villain of the Week story, a nice change of pace since I'm tired of talking about Spider Slayers. With all that said, let's begin our summary of Season 1, Episode 4. Our story begins with Peter meeting with Felicia Hardy at her family's estate. He's ecstatic going on a date with her, but unknown to both of them, Felicia has another visitor, Dr. Octopus. Doc Ock breaks into the Hardys' home, kidnapping Felicia and knocking out Peter. Later that evening, Peter has awoken and is being questioned by Agent Ford of the FBI. During the questioning, Felicia's mother, Anastasia Hardy, arrives at the scene. Agent Ford briefs Mrs. Hardy of the situation and proceeds to give her a ransom letter. The letter is from Dr. Octopus, or as Anastasia knew him as, Otto Octavius. Octavius demands a handsome amount of money to complete his fusion experiment. Otto warns that if he's not given the money, Mrs. Hardy will lose her daughter. Anastasia, realizing the situation, comes to one conclusion to explain Otto's actions: revenge. She hired Otto since his fusion project held great promise, but constant delays and slow progress forced her to cut his funding.
I've worked in the private sector. They expect results.
Although he lost his grant, Otto continues his project, even creating a makeshift lab in a rundown apartment. Unfortunately, his ambition got the better of him. His fusion trial resulted in him blowing up his lab and melding his mechanical arms to his body. Surviving his failure, Octavius vows to get revenge on Anastasia and complete his fusion project, no matter what. First things first, and this must absolutely be mentioned, where the heck is Mary Jane? She was literally revealed in the previous episode as a new addition to the cast, and she is nowhere in this episode. No appearance, no cameo, not even a mention. This is quite baffling. I couldn't find anything online to explain this decision, so you can only theorize that they simply chose not to use her for this episode, or this episode was already in development before the Spider Slayer story. Either case, it's bizarre in any show to introduce a new cast member and not have them appear in the next episode following their debut. With that out of the way, I will have to criticize the episode's plot for mishandling the setup to the conflict. In the beginning of the episode, I can understand J. Jonah Jameson using his company to help Anastasia, since both she and Jonah have a professional and friendly relationship with each other. That being said, why did Anastasia and the FBI allow Jonah to be a mediator and negotiate Felicia's freedom, even though Jonah is no way qualified to do this, nor is he forced to? Especially since Jonah is the last person you want to handle a hostage situation in which it is all about careful dialogue and trying to calm a dangerous person. Naturally, Jonah ends up making the situation worse. This causes to question why Agent Ford didn't handle the talk with Octavius. He's clearly in charge of the investigation, and we can assume is an experienced field agent who knows how to handle a crisis. Then again, the episode doesn't show that Agent Ford is all that bright either. Could have at least better prepared Jameson for the negotiation, have a unit ready for backup if the ransom went south, and as well he allowed two citizens to be involved in a dangerous situation. He's lucky that one of the citizens was Peter, or else he would have had Jonah and Felicia killed. The reason for Peter getting involved is just as equally baffling. Peter was allowed to deliver his second ransom to the doc only because he had him as a teacher for one summer. That's it. Apparently, knowing someone for a few brief months as a child is enough to send a college student without protection to a literal madman. Quite honestly, the setup for the confrontation between Spidey and Doc Ock is the most nonsensical and contrived setup I've seen in a while. Honestly, you can rewrite the first 2 acts to make it more coherent. You don't have to take away any characters, and if you're gonna bother introducing a minor character like Agent Ford, have him do something that shows off his skills as an agent and actually contribute personally to the conflict at hand. Thankfully, by the final act of the story, it becomes a well-done fight between a hero and villain. The animation in particular was surprising how well they showed off Octopus's arms and Spidey's acrobatics. From beginning to end, the final fight is entertaining, with the only issues being a technical issue and a bizarre nitpick. In the middle of the fight, when Doc captures Spider-Man, there's a cut to Doc monologuing to Spidey. I don't know if they're trying to reuse animations or made a genuine error, but when it comes to Octopus talking, he's clearly shown to be on a monitor. It's really bad, to the point you can see the layout of the monitor in Octopus's image is slanted to indicate he's appearing from a screen. I don't know how this obvious mistake made it past the final edit, but it did. In regards to bizarre nitpicks, I will admit, I probably care about this too much, as this is literally not a big deal. But I want to share anyway. I can buy that Octavius found a random abandoned factory that creates rockets and that it's still functional. You can even argue Doc rebuilt the place, and I'll believe you. What I find odd about it, though, is that this modern factory uses a piece of technology that hasn't been used in major production assemblies since the end of the 19th century. I'm referring to a type of generator called a dynamo. Before I go on, I need to clarify that the dynamo was an instrumental plot device for the climax. Without it, Spider-Man would have failed.
Dynamos make electricity by spinning a coil between the poles of either a magnet or an electromagnet. What's the matter, Doc? Stuck on that dynamo's magnet?
Now that you understand, here is my odd grievance. Why is it a dynamo? An obsolete type of generator used in creating rockets. Modern production assemblies, devices, and vehicles all use alternators, as they generate much more electricity than a dynamo, since a dynamo uses a direct current whilst an alternator uses an alternative current. Again, this is an extremely minor nitpick, but it was just weird that the writers went ahead and used a dynamo for the story. I didn't know what a dynamo was when it appeared on the episodes. I had to do research, and this little rant is the result of that research. There's only one explanation that I can think of why this specific type of technology was used in the story, and that this episode's plot was co-written by Stan Lee himself. If you ever read any of his early Marvel books, then you know he would use real technology and have them being used as if they were the most versatile tech on the planet. Remember Tony Stark's armor was able to do everything it can do because of transistors? My whole point about this is that I found more enjoyment and interest learning about dynamos than watching this episode. This episode is a loose adaptation of Dr. Octopus' first appearance in Amazing Spider-Man number 3. The show and the comic both follow a deranged Octavius attempting to complete a nuclear experiment only for Spider-Man to stop him. Like these past few episodes, there are key major differences. To start off, in the comic, the name Dr. Octopus was just a nickname that Otto and his co-workers called him, whilst in the show, Octavius became Dr. Octopus as a result of his disastrous experiment.
Paid the price. Dr. Octavius vanished in that explosion, and Dr. Octopus was born.
It was the same in the comic, where both versions of the Doc became villainous due to his failure. The comic, however, implies that the radiation from his atomic experiment messed with his head and turned him evil. The show gives Doc a more understandable backstory with how Otto was struggling to complete what he sees as his life work. His firing and the accident were what set off a fuse inside of him to become malevolent. It certainly makes more sense than radiation going to his brain. Another key difference between the comic and its adaptation was Peter's part in the story. The episode is 100% focused on Octavius' downfall, with Peter and the rest of the supporting cast reacting to it. Like I stated in the beginning of the video, this episode is a standard Villain of the Week episode, so its story is more focused on showcasing the villain than progressing Peter's character. The comic is the complete opposite. In the beginning of the comic, we see Peter stating,
"It's almost too easy! I've run out of enemies who can give me any real opposition. I'm too powerful for any foe. I almost wish for an opponent who'd give me a run for my money."
The comic is a story about humbling Peter's unearned ego and him learning not to give up when things get tough. It's literally mentioned during the pep rally scene with Johnny Storm. Octavius is used as a strong villain who would do anything in his power to get what he wants. He does similar actions like his TV counterpart with kidnapping hostages and taking over buildings. The difference being that the show gives a little sympathy, and I do mean little, to Octavius, while the comic outright makes him a genuine bad guy. Comic Octavius was crazy enough to take over a lab, destroy it, and rebuild it so that he can show the world his genius. At least Cartoon Otto took over an abandoned factory. Finally, on more smaller changes, in the comic, Peter didn't have any personal connection with Octavius and only got involved to take pictures for the Bugle. And this comic also marks the second appearance of Fantastic Four member the Human Torch in the first Amazing series. He was originally going to battle Dr. Octopus, but his powers were at low energy, and instead he decided to go to Peter's high school pep rally. Overall, this marks the first episode of the show in which I can easily declare a bad episode. It is such a shame that it had to be the debut of Dr. Octopus. For such an iconic Spider-Man villain, his episode contained a poorly thought out first and second act, a major editing oversight, and a bizarre usage of technology. There are some positives in this episode, such as the well-animated fight between our main hero and villain. The adaptation provides Doc Ock with a more rounded character than how he was in the comic, and while I can't find any definitive proof, a few elements seen in this episode, such as Otto's fusion experiment and his backstory, can be seen as a basis for how he was written in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy. Again, it's not a good episode, but it had solid ideas that thankfully led to better Spider-Man stories. Thank you very much for watching all of Spider-Blood Episode 4. Don't forget to watch our other content on the Hack Jack Show channel, such as the main show, Hack's Comic Reviews, Hack Cross, and Jack's Streams. I host a variety of streams such as my chill streams, my morning, evening streams, and much more. You can find my weekly stream schedule posted on our channel's community tab and pinned on my Twitter homepage at dandy_spike. Follow me there for channel announcements and if you want to interact with me. Episode 5 coming soon, and this is Hack, signing off.